Hey guys, a couple people have asked me what to do in a riot recently. There's been riots going on. Greg here, Bone Tactical, by the way. Some of you guys know that I've had my share of riots in my life, and I've been through social unrest both in Latin America. I was in the political unrest down here in Honduras, where we had basically a civil war type scenario back in 2012, and again in 2018. And, various times there's been military coups, and then the president changed the Constitution. Everybody wanted to revolt and all that. And I've been through that, been through prison riots, and I'll tell you guys, I've been through my share of massive fights and large numbers of aggressive people. And I'll tell you what to do, because it's actually very simple. So I understand, though, that you guys probably don't know what to do in a riot. You probably don't understand. You probably haven't been there. So it's kind of weird for me, because it's like second nature. It's just kind of common sense, but it's not necessarily common sense for somebody who's never dealt with that before. So I'm going to cut right into it, and I'm going to tell you what to do. Now, basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try and match the hatch, so to speak. That's actually a term I took from fishing, Southwest Florida. But what it means is you kind of want to look around you and see what people are doing. It's very close to my gray man theory videos. You guys have probably seen my gray man theory videos and are familiar with them. If you haven't, that's what you need to learn. It's super important that you learn gray man theory. Okay, and there's nowhere else on YouTube that you can learn the real gray man theory other than my channel. So watch my gray man theory videos. It's a playlist, gray man theory. It's it's life-changing information. Anyway, from that point that you understand gray man theory, you're paying attention to your surroundings, and you know what to look for. Then you know how to match the hatch. Basically, I'll give you an example of when I was in Central America and there was people revolting. They were revolting for a local nationalist party and trying to take over the country for a guy who didn't become president by means of a faulty election, and that should have became president, and his colors were red and the other guy's colors were blue. So there was people all around that were red, and there was a few times where I would have to say the local chants. And one of those local chants, for example, here in Honduras was get out, J-O-H, so it was ho, and they'd say fuera ho was like a local term that they used. And it's basically a kind of a thing here in this country and in Central America that we learned from writing. But in the United States, you've got now going on this Black Lives Matter, which is basically a domestic terrorist group that is masquerading as a civil rights group, from what I understand. And basically they are kind of crusading, so to speak, for trying to create some sort of a supremacy for the African American black, because it's Black Lives Matter, race, which is interesting, because the things that we were trying, that people who were very supportive of, very anti-racist people like myself, who were trying to supportive of other things. I'll give an example. MLK, what he was fighting for was the ending of segregation. Picking a topic and fighting for it. Today, these people are doing the opposite. They're picking a race and trying to fight for a race, which is literal racism, and you can't fight racism with racism. So if you're black and you're saying Black Lives Matter, instead of saying Black Lives Matter, pick a subject and fight for it. Fight for something. If you want something that's being done wrong to stop, fight for police reform, okay, for example. But let me get out of the politics and get back into what to do in a riot. Look what's going on around you. Those guys, like I said, for the Nationalist Party were wearing red, so I would have to chant that saying, okay, and then I would have to throw on some red, or looking so much different, I immediately draw all kinds of eyes. So I would need to take a red bandana and tie it around my face or something like that. And then there's varying levels of population density, and the craziest people are in the tightest patterns, and they're fighting the most right there where everybody's kind of together doing, trashing cars or burning police cars or setting tires on fire, as it was here, or blocking, burning down or blowing up bridges and blocking major routes of transportation. It depends, what country you're in and what they're doing. So you need to, at one point in time, I had to cross over a bridge. I was protecting a load of moving some stuff. I was working private security, moving stuff some stuff from point A to point B. It became physically impossible to move that vehicle. That video is actually up here. It became physically impossible to move that vehicle from point A to point B, so we had to stash the vehicle with extremely expensive goods. Luckily, we had a safe house, stashed the vehicle in the safe house, and then had to go on foot to finally go to another location where we could end ourselves, safely and spend some time until things died down, which ended up taking over a month. But we were crossing a bridge on foot, and I was just a sore thumb, so I actually had to, by whatever means necessary, acquire a bandana that was previously somebody else's and put that bandana over my face because I was just drawing too much attention to everybody. And then I had to chant along with the local saying that I had mentioned earlier. But that kept me from having to go full out fight. So what I noticed that I had to do to match the hatch was I started seeing eyes snapping to me. Okay, if I would have looked weak, which I was twice the size of everybody there, obviously, just you can look in my eyes and see that, I mean business. So the eyes were snapping to me and just thinking, why is this guy here? And I had some people testing me by, shouting that shout to me. And if I didn't return the shout, then it would have got bad. But I just returned the shout, whatever. I don't care. I'm not involved, but I just said whatever I needed to say to get through. So, like I said, in that situation where the bridge is the focus point, you need to get through and then get far away from people and finish what you're trying to do. If it's a cop car, you need to try and stay as far away. That's burning and on fire, you need to try and stay as far away from it as you can. Get away from it, move through, and then get to the other point, basically like I'm saying. So that's the idea there. If you have something in your vehicle like this bone breacher tomahawk, then this would be a great option. I didn't have a bone breacher with me. I wish I did, because what you can do with something like this is you can show it in your hand and you can use it as a less lethal tool, first of all, hitting a couple people, and it'll keep people off of you, and you can have it in your hand, and when people's eyes snap to you, like I told you, people are mulling around and looking around, and it's like zombies. They're looking sharks. When they smell blood in the water, if you look weak, if you're small, if you're a woman, if you look weak, if you can't fight, people will know you can't fight. They can smell it. It's like they're like animals at that state. They can smell a weakness and they'll exploit it. When those eyes snap to you, if you have this in your hand, you just got tougher and you became a harder target, okay? And now you have a higher advantage. So carrying something like this bone breacher tomahawk in your vehicle gives you a huge advantage, even if you're not necessarily speaking a badass. So that's an idea, but then there's that final scenario where all eyes are snapping to you, you don't have anything, you don't have that tool or weapon, you don't have a way to defend yourself, and now all of a sudden there's basically, let's say, 3 things that you have to do. You need to inflict the most pain possible on the closest person to you. You need to make a show of it, and you need to make noise of it, okay? You need to make noise. You need to look like a crazy person. That first person, you use gravity as a weapon. If you look around and see this right here, this is nasty. All I have to do is control them at the waist, which is where the body hinges somehow. Grab the belt, grab the waist, kick that one or both feet out from under them, or kick one of the knees right above the patella tendon, and then direct their head or face down to something like this using gravity as a weapon. Find a weapon really quickly and do a lot of damage to that person that's closest to you, because like I said, those people are circling and there's like sharks. They smell blood in the water. So in that riot scenario, when violence is being done by large groups of people, like these Black Lives Matter groups that flip from a peaceful protest in a second into actually attacking people, you need to attack first. When they start closing in, you need to attack first. You need to draw blood. You need to make a lot of noise. You need to look like a crazy person. I learned that in prison. During prison riots, a buddy of mine, one in particular, we were working out, went back to back on the prison yard, and basically in the middle of the riot, knocked a couple people in the head, blood. At the end of the riot, we had blood all over us. But people, what they said was, crazy white boys, crazy white boys. It's the same exact thing. It was majority blacks there. They like to take advantage of whites when they have the majority. And so, I saw it time and time again in the Florida prison system, Florida correction system. They, when you get a group of black people together, in my experience, personal experience, they target whites every single time. So it's funny because everybody says all this stuff about racism and white privilege and all this. The only racism that I've actually seen that's real, violent, dangerous racism is black people in groups racist against anybody other than their race. So it's just my personal experience, in my opinion. I've seen it from the time I was 16, 15 years old in group homes, okay? Stepped up, living under the roof of and being property of the state of Florida. I saw it there being a minority, and then I saw it, from there on in the correction system being a minority. So definitely racism exists, and definitely it isn't what you see on the news, and it isn't what you might think it is. But so you need to do the most damage possible. You need to make it bloody. You need to be that. I gave that prison example because you need to be that crazy white boy, okay? If you're a girl, you need to make people second guess. And if you hurt that first person very bad, they're screaming, you're bloody, they're bloody, it's their blood all over you. You move to the second person, you do the same damage to them. You're looking for more weapons, environmental weapons. You do all that damage to these people. If you have this bone tactical tomahawk or something like that, it's going to make it so much easier. But if you don't, you just got to do that damage. And then by the second person, every time, because this has happened to me, I can't even tell you how many times, people don't fight a guy like me one-on-one. They try to jump me. So I've been bouncing, stuff like that. Guy, I kick a guy out, he'll come back up with 3 or 4 of his buddies, okay? You got to hurt the first 2 of them bad. If they're real tough guys, you hurt that first one and they think it's a gimmick. They think maybe you got lucky. You hurt that second one, and then every single time, doesn't matter how badass they are, they stop for a second and they think, is it really worth it? Did my buddy that just got hurt that bad, was he really that good of a friend of mine? And at that split second that they second guess, is this really worth it? Is it really worth it to do this, to try and fight this guy after he just really hurt 2 of my buddies? You've got to just get the heck out of there. You've got to use that split second that happens every single time. It always happens after the second person. Often, if they're not real hardened fighters, it'll happen after the first person. They'll just quit. But even the most hardened fighters, after that second person, they'll take a second. They'll take a split second and just pause. They'll pause. They'll reconsider the situation, making a plan for how to attack you. While they're doing that, just get the heck out of there. And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to pursue you because they just saw 2 of their friends. Well, 2 of their friends are on the ground bleeding and screaming. They're not going to pursue you. So, especially in a riot situation, they don't have a personal vendetta against you. So that's how to survive a riot every single time, guys. It's easy. It's so easy. And yeah, it requires a little bit of work. It requires speed. It requires power. It requires violence. It requires you to be practicing and living your life. Okay, me being a martial artist and training every day, I'm ready for it. If you're not, like I said, I'll tell you one more time, get something like the Bone Tactical Tomahawk, Bone Breacher, less lethal capacity. You can take the sheath off real quick if stuff really hits the fan and start chopping people's arms off and impaling this in people's heads, even if they're wearing a Kevlar helmet. Yep, I said it. So, thanks for watching. Questions, comments below. Blown out.